Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to another fabulous episode of Stories Around Azeroth. We are on episode 50 today, which means next week is our anniversary episode. Yes, I know, 51, because we missed 1 week over Christmas.
Yeah. I think that was my fault.
No, it's my fault. I felt ill that week, and
okay.
You were obviously on holiday anyway. But yes,
that is true.
As usual, I am joined by the beautiful Frazley TC. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm actually just like currently fan gnoming about our guest this week. I'm just like,
it's brilliant.
Our guest this week is Athalus of Warcraft Radio. I stole your thunder, but I got to tell you, I listened to Athalus while I was 14 while playing WoW, and I'm just like, it's weird talking with you now. Meeting up, look, I'm like, one of the people that has been a role model of me. I'm talking with you. That's cool.
I think. How are you doing, Athalus? First,
I'm doing great. I don't know how to follow that up. I love that, man. No, it's a long time ago. 16 years now.
I think Warcraft Radio means so much to so many different people over the course of the game itself. I mean, my history goes back to Blue Please and Total Biscuit and all the way back then, and just various other shows as well. But
I remember being on a Collins show on WoW Radio. I forget what the topic was, but I signed up and I got Skyped in, and that was like cool being
Skype.
I can't knock Skype because I still actually have to use it for certain streams and bits and pieces. Did you just call your guest old? I
did not call Athalus old, right? I'm calling him wise and inexperienced. He's been doing this stuff longer than I have. So see there.
Skype. I remember when we discovered Skype could be used for that. Because before that, I had this whole setup where I had a actual phone line plugged into a little device that converted the audio to 3.5 millimeter, and I had a sound card. Like, it was a whole setup. And then when Skype came to the scene, it just sort of revolutionized the way you could get people to participate on shows. It's crazy.
It would surprise me if someone tried to raid using Skype as well, get 40 people in one call. That would have been
fun. Yeah.
Oh,
I think it had a hard cap, didn't it? Skype calls, didn't it?
I don't remember. It's been so long. I'm an old man. I don't have that kind of memory anymore.
For those people who don't know who you are, Athalus, how about you introduce yourself to them?
Yeah, sure. My name is Athalus, or Ath, Gareth, whatever you want to call me. I've been doing content creation around WoW sort of off and on for 16 years now. It's probably been, starting in July, we started back up, but prior to that, it had probably been 10 years since I had done any kind of content creation. Never quit playing WoW, but have sort of branched out into other games, things of that nature. So started Warcraft Radio back in 2004. It was during the closed beta period, and got to see the first couple of years of that just be extremely successful. Went off to do some career bits, sort of came back around into the group towards the end of their run, and then after that went on to try to do some things around Overwatch and StarCraft 2 and whatnot. Anyway, with WoW Classic, just kind of said, should probably do this again, right? So ended up coming back. I don't still play Classic. It was very short-lived, but I know. But no, it's I don't really, other than lifelong gamer, lifelong PC gamer. I'll be very clear about that. Love the game still, and recently playing a lot of Civilization. Yeah,
it's not a bad game to play, to be fair.
Yeah.
We've all got our no, absolutely, like all sorts of that genre are. I had a thought while I was preparing everything in the show. Why don't we have a Ghostbusters game that works like XCOM?
Oh, because there is a Ghostbusters 3 game that was actually really good. But yeah, you're right, like XCOM.
I don't think there's been a good Ghostbusters game since Sanctum of the Slime, to be honest. And even then, I think one of the better ones was back on the old Mega Drive.
There was the one that I believe was written by Rick Moranis, Robert Zemeckis, that it was written by.
Oh, the new one that's coming out or meant to be coming out. Yeah.
No, it came out a couple years ago, like maybe 10 years ago, and it's one I played through once and enjoyed. It was like Ghostbusters 3, but in video game form.
That's Sanctum of the Slime.
Oh, okay. Then yeah, see.
No, I know the one you're talking about. It's the multiplayer one that they just recently remastered. But yes, we're here to talk about Azeroth goodness and everything else before we get sidetracked onto other video games.
Yeah, we talk about Ghostbusters. Like, I love Ghostbusters 2 with the Titanic. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Feed.
You're just here to ruin my life today, aren't you? Make me record the show early. Goodness gracious me. As always, ladies and gentlemen, we normally talk about what we've been up to this week in the world of Warcraft, in Azeroth, that we call our home. Athalus, you're the guest. Have you been up to anything in Azeroth this week? Anything that's kept you occupied?
Just some alpha gameplay. Looking forward to seeing what's coming out, and got to do a little bit in Bastion, got to do a little bit in Revendreth, a little bit of dungeon runs, overall just kind of exploring all the new content, trying not to spoil things too much, but it's been a lot of fun getting in alpha. I want to say this is probably one of the most polished early builds of an expansion that we've seen.
Yeah.
And I think that was because they knew they were going to have a ton of streaming and content creation going in, early on, so it had to look good from the very beginning. So
thoughts on Torghast?
Yeah, did some Torghast. I haven't been able to get all the way to floor 72 yet, so feeling a little inadequate. But between playing Frost Mage, of course, this week they allowed warriors to go in, and I main a Fury warrior, so been trying to progress through that. Man, if you can get through the first few floors of that heroic or whatever skill level, it's a breeze from there. But those first few floors, you got to take them slow.
I think it's going to be very different once we actually get the true version of it, where hopefully it'll be a proper climb from one, and it won't be broken up between difficulty levels, which I think they've just done for testing. I'll be honest with you.
I was enjoying it where like I have not been able to get past easy, but like I've tried the normal and heroic and I kept just getting clobbered. But on easy, when I got to floor 12, I got some good difficulty, like some really good anima powers, and then those were all just gone. I think those would have helped me in the climb up.
I think I was watching Mephisto stream the warrior one because he was having some early problems with the heroic version as well, and obviously those who know Mephisto know he is warrior man.
Yeah.
The warrior man.
He is.
He got to 72 last night, but he was just like, once he got past that first hurdle of heroic, he was just like it just felt easy and incomparable. Watching you half health of a boss mob just by like shattering throw and charging is just insane.
It's a lot of fun, and it certainly plays into the fantasy of whatever class you're playing, all the different power-ups and things, and you start to think like, okay, now I want this outside of Torghast, right?
Yeah.
How can we balance something around this outside of Torghast? The problem with the way that they've structured it today by splitting up the different skill levels is that balance-wise, it doesn't really give them, in my opinion, accurate feedback for balancing it once it goes live. Because if we know we're going to start at floor 1, so by the time I get to 25, I have all these power-ups, but it still has to be difficult and challenging even with all those power-ups.
I have to wonder if the eventual end thing will just be the levels that you go in on, like the different difficulty levels are going to be massive spikes, and that's why it feels a lot harder when you go into it fresh.
Yeah.
Obviously, as you're saying, like with all the different powers, you're going to go into those difficulty spikes. They might just tune them upwards, maybe. Who knows? I don't know. I honestly don't know how they can make it harder without just swarming you with against mobs. And then those with AoE tactics can just deal with those probably easier. So
yeah, and with the Malrot bomb, you can take out so many enemies like that.
It's a huge undertaking because they've said that they're balancing it per spec, right? Not even per class, but like they're balancing everything per spec. And how do you tune that many different specs? And then how do you do that combinations of them too, right? If I've got 5 people with 5 spec, the number of possibilities here, like you almost have to somehow dumb down each spec to some kind of a quotient of some kind that you can balance against each other. But I do not envy their stat people, their statisticians.
I mean, my question to the two of you, since you're obviously both on Alpha and you've obviously tested Torghast, is do you think it'll last an expansion?
I think it can. Will it? I don't know. I mean, there have been systems in the past where we've said, how are they going to make this interesting through the whole expansion, or is it going to cap out somewhere halfway through, and then it's this thing that you might go back to occasionally, right? And I think when I look at the platform they've built, because remember, this is really a platform they've built, and there's a lot they can do with it. So they're going to need to continually think up new quests and things to put in there, because you'll notice there were some quests, kind of routes that you could take and things of that nature. And the nice thing about all of the systems they've built over the years is the way that they've made it easier for them to kind of scale things further. And so could it last the whole expansion? I think it could. But I guess the real question is, will we as gamers get bored of the same mechanic, right? Because you look at all the games that come out that they do all these expansions, but the number of people that generally buy an expansion to a game is less than the people that bought the initial game itself. It's a little bit different with MMOs, but you almost think of, okay, if you keep adding to Torghast, great, but is it still Torghast? So will you get tired of it before the expansion ends? That's the real question.
I feel like the only way they could reasonably do anything is to temper with it the same way they do the Mythic Plus system, at which point they put different seasonal affixes in there. So season 1 being entry level will keep it very basic. Maybe once you get to like 70 and above, you'll get like a big seasonal affix for the more done, whatever the more raids are going to affect Mythic Plus. So like those, that'll be how they affect Torghast, on top of like the standard thing, is that you'll get affixes every so many levels that have changed how you're doing things. That's the only way I can reasonably think they do difficulty. And then maybe obviously those can change with every season that they do Torghast, which could be a decent way to tackle it, I guess.
Yeah, because Dutch Mephisto's bring up season in Diablo 3 as an example of how to keep it engaging.
Yeah, that's absolutely true as well.
And I think if they were to add if they were to maybe put like a few people every so often, you got to develop some levels for Torghast. Like you develop some assets, you develop some different mechanics. If they can do what they should have done with the World Quest system and really make it where it is constantly changing, I think that'll add a little bit of intrigue. Because I enjoyed it was one time in a spider lair. Then when I died, I was back in it and I was in another hall. If they can keep it changing for you, that'll make it more engaging.
I see what you're saying. Like the environments actually change with what you're fighting against and have a different particular
because
I think that'd be cool. I think I saw somebody, I think it might have been Preach or somebody else that mentioned like they could pretty much like stick in old raid bosses in there instead of just like having the named mobs in there. Like, which brings me on to something else that I want to see one of the raid dungeons from Shadowlands where all of these big bad bosses which you've taken down have this massive grudge and be like, these bloody champions, let's all work together to take them down. But then, I don't know, would you just turn around and have everybody go, it's reused content at that point, even though the premise would probably be really cool?
It's a good question. I think the system of Torghast is one thing, and then you were just talking about the setting. So I have this kind of theory, right, which is we know that Icecrown Citadel and Torghast almost act as sort of like a bridge to each other because we've seen the way that the towers sort of line up and then you break the barrier. What we also know is that there are a number of different worlds that send their dead to the Shadowlands. So is Torghast similarly connected to some of these other worlds, I wonder? And if it is, then I think that opens up the number of environments we can have in Torghast. Right now, a lot of the environments we're seeing in Torghast are very centered around undead. They feel like sort of ice crowning, if you will.
Yeah.
But if it's connected to other worlds similarly, it's very possible they have a wide variety of environments they could introduce over time that would ultimately allude to some of these other worlds that we could potentially experience down the road. Of course, we've all sort of seen kind of canonly, like in the Chronicle, where all the different planes and everything that exists. So I'd love to see us get connected into some of those and see some environments in Torghast
It would be interesting. Without Googling it up and actually having a look at the cosmology page, I don't know whereabouts the Shadowland like spreads out from in terms of there. So I might actually have to have a quick Google for the WoW cosmology map. Actually,
and
there we go.
One thing that concerned me on what you just said, because back in Legion we had the Argus and we had the world invasions, and the idea sounded really cool that you're gonna like have these worlds that you're gonna go to, and then they kind of ended up being recycled, and it did not feel like other than you just walk in here. I was excited to be able to go to different places. it's the execution. The islands I was excited for to be like different things at different places, and they all feel the same to me, other than just the mobs. That's my criticism of it. That if it could be a little different.
You're right. Islands, they did do different settings, so they were still islands.
Yeah,
right? And it was still nuke everything.
I mean, I'm looking at the cosmology map here, and like, obviously, reality in the middle. They've obviously got a picture of Azeroth, but is that containing reality to Azeroth, or does it expand outwards to everything that exists within our reality plane? So, from what we know, does that include stuff from Argus, Draenor, Outland? Technically, like where on the dimensional scale does that fit? But then, outside of Shadowlands and the Emerald Dream, we've got the 6 elemental planes, you know, which include Decay and Undead, which we've not really stepped into. Because on the opposite side, we've got the Wild Gods, which is how they leech into Azeroth through the Emerald Dream. So it'll be interesting to see how outwards they go, because past Wild Gods, Titans, Burning Legion, and Undead, you've got Nature, Disorder, Necromantic, and Arcane, and then it goes even further out from there. My question is that if the Burning Legion specifically is on the outer plane outside of the elemental ones with Wild Gods, Titans, and Undead, how are they seeping in, other than just being in the what's it called, the Twisting Nether? That's essentially space, or is space different to the Twisting Nether as we know it?
Great questions. You know, you wonder. I believe like Argus is part of the reality plane, for example, right? It's not a separate plane. It's just another world within reality. And so, you know, my theory could be a little flawed in that maybe a lot of these creatures are actually just coming from different worlds in the reality plane, right? Maybe they're not coming from other planes. We haven't really seen any sign within Shadowlands yet of anything that came from some of these other planes. Like everything so far feels like physical creatures that have come here from, you know, whatever world they passed away in. But there's no Burning Legion. There's no. But then there is some, you know, play with nature and the wild gods, right?
I think by looking at the cosmology, we look at it as a very flat sense rather than fluid, like everything between the elemental plane, which we've only really seen in Deepholm, essentially, and the Firelands themselves as these elemental planes, because we've never really been to the proper water plane, which we were meant to do back in Cataclysm in a raid dungeon type form. But there's so much there that's meant to be seen, and it's going to be interesting to see how they do it. But I think they're playing it very safe by saying this is a dimensional plane that's there. We're going to visit it, but here's a lot of stuff which feels very similar to what you already know. Hence why, is it Maldraxxus, the one that looks like they've just got all the architecture from Nax?
Yes. Yeah, a lot of undead sort of feel, if you will.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've got a lot represented. In fact, if we look at the 4, I'm just curious if this lines up. So the 4 main forces, right? You got the light, 6. You got the light and the darkness. You got life and undeath and order and disorder, and you can almost line several of those up to zones in the Shadowlands. You've got life is certainly Ardenweald. Order is certainly Bastion. Undeath is probably Maldraxxus, right? Revendreth, I don't know. So I wonder if they're going with aligning zones to different polar parts of the cosmology, in which case, if we can line one up to each, then that probably means a couple new zones that we haven't heard about yet will have to match up with the others. And that would kind of point to Shadowlands being sort of a nexus point for all Afterlife, for all of these different.
True. I mean, who knows the way the direction is going to turn with the Giant Sword and Silithus if they actually decide to do something with that. That could, who knows, we could see that lead into the whole Disorder plane, you know, and we could have another Burning Legion themed like Fell expansion that way.
More green.
They open it, more green. A whole expansion of green rather than that. But it'd be interesting, you know. The biggest thing that's come out with a recent interview with Ian, the name escapes me. It wasn't Sloot that did one recently. It was somebody else. Yeah, was that the Shadowlands has its own version of the Titans for that plane? Oh, that was the biggest. That was the biggest thing that screamed out to me.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's interesting where it sits below the Titan plane, but it's also thank you, Zoltan. Thank you very much. But it also has its own sort of pantheon that exists within its own cycle of the sphere as well, which I don't know. Obviously, Chronicle becomes outdated how Blizzard decides to move the lore for a continuing game. It would be, I guess, this is the problem with having Warcraft as an MMO rather than Warcraft as standalone games. You know.
Sure.
Well, and they were saying that the Chronicles are from the Titans' perspective, and
they're not written by the Titans. That's the thing. That's what makes it interesting.
And they said that, I think Ian was kind of hinting that there could be a lie in the Chronicles, that there's stuff that we've been deceived.
I guess the biggest way you could turn around and say is that it's the same way that Diablo, a lot of Diablo stuff is written from the viewpoint of Deckard Cain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's always, I like the idea that Chronicles is basically some priest somewhere mind visioning a Titan and going, I know everything you've done.
And they'd be like,
I look through your eyes. Exactly, and then they just write a book based on it. Interesting. Well, that was a lot. That was more in depth than I was thinking. Mr. Frazley, what have you been up to this week, my dude? I know you've been getting back on the Iron train.
Yes.
We had Nisi on last week.
Because Nisi really encouraged me to get back into WoW challenges, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to take my 5th tune. I've just been scared to get back in, and when Classic came out, that took my time, and then I just kept filling things up. So I took my Tauren, and I am now up to 31. And I was going to keep going Wednesday, but internet started acting weird, and Raz was like, nope, you should stop now. And I'm like, good idea, because I had a few times I'm like, my internet's like lagged. I'm like, no. But I was able to get through, and I had somehow, I got frazzled beforehand, and I spammed like one of my shields, and that saved me on that internet outage.
Yeah, I mean, as I've told you before, you just need to keep calm when you're doing Iron Man.
And that's been helping me a lot recently. Like I've been thinking a lot more. Like I've got a new phrase: withholding judgment. I will hold on the mobs that will flee. Judgment has been working perfectly to get them before they go get another mob.
Interesting. You're enjoying the Paladin though? Is the Paladin your class of choice now, keeping you a little bit safer?
Yes, and I actually think that until I get to 120 or 60, depending on how long it takes me to do the Iron, I might actually keep the Tauren Paladin as the one I roll. I'm not planning to have this one die, but it could die. But I like the War Stomp. The War Stomp has you reminded me of the War Stomp many times. That has been very helpful because they silence all enemies in my area. And I like doing something that I've not done Horde quest enough. It's kind of nice being different than my normal leveling.
I guess that's the problem with being an Alliance main, isn't it? Like you'll have a Horde ult just so you can get your achievements for doing the story, but you know you're not really. There's always this stuff. I think we had a conversation again going back to Mephisto's stream last night. It was just like you really like Thousand Needles pre-Cataclysm, and I'm saying I hated it even back in Classic.
I like the Raceway.
I'm glad they drowned it. I'm glad it got underwater.
But I wanted to go racing around. I wanted to be Speed Racer and all
that. Before we move on to what I've been up to this week, you've had a bit of luck this week, haven't you, my friend?
Yes. So Lich King ran twice, and one full clear by myself, and then Cap had a lockout. So Cap took me through ICC again. No invincible. But I decided on a whim after my ICC to go to Darkswell Marsh, go to a little lair that with this dragon that hasn't been relevant since vanilla. I walk in, and all of a sudden, that Nixia's drake dropped.
Wow. Nice.
It took me by surprise, and I've gotten both the people that are happy for me and the people that are jealous, the people that are angry at me. I'm just like, so I've gotten everybody's emotions.
I mean, I don't know why anybody can be jealous, I'll be honest. Like, it's something that's existed in the game for Wrath. I think they re-brought in Anixia.
Well, I'm finding people that have been trying for a long time. Like one person has been trying 1,400 runs, and they have not gotten it.
And if you've done 1,400 runs on Anixia and not had that thing drop, I feel bad for you.
Yeah. You're cursed.
Yeah, there's something about that that's just you cursed. But it's really funny because you put out a clip of you after it dropped, and you just because you don't really get a lot of these mount drops, do you?
No, I've gotten the Infinite Time Reaver, and the Blue Protodrake. The Blue Protodrake after 6 runs. Sorry,
that I don't care about. The Time Reaver I do. You keep rubbing it in every chance you can get.
I mean, I gotta do it before I run out of time. So I mean, it's
Well, I'll get it eventually.
Yes.
One day.
But yeah, I don't typically get it, and I didn't think I was gonna get it. Just running Onyxia real fast before I had to go on to another event with Michael, and then all of a sudden it drops. I'm like, did I? And like my phrase of the night was wow, multiple times.
Yeah, the first. Sorry, it's just popped up on the stream.
Yeah, I did.
It's pretty cool.
Good job, buddy.
Those mounts that you always get for the first time, the ones that you've been farming for a long time, when they drop, you always have that sense of wow, this is amazing. And it's just like if you do anything in every other game and you just get that rare percentage drop or something like that. It's it's generally decent. It's a lot of fun. So congratulations to you, my friend.
Oh, thank you. And now I can finally leave that behind. I won't go back unless there's some transmog I absolutely need, because I've got plenty of other mounts I got to farm.
That's also the best thing about mount hunting, is that you can just tick something off your list.
Yes.
When I managed to knock off Throne of Thunder and Mogashan Vaults, the sigh of relief that washed over me for not having to farm those for mounts anymore was immeasurable. I
was hearing Ali's relief on Dunfables. She just got the Drake of the Four Winds.
Oh yeah, the new one. Yeah, I haven't really been farming the new stuff myself yet.
Yeah, she went into just on a whim while she's over in Oldham, and she did it all, and I was like, and she was relieved to have that.
So just for my knowledge, when was the first time you ever ran Onyxia, like for real?
I ran that back in Classic.
In vanilla,
I think. Yeah, in vanilla. Yeah, like I did it. I didn't really do any level 60 rating on content because I only got 60 like a week after TBC came out. So my first raiding experience, I think, was at 62 in Zul'Gurub. But then Better Crusade was when I started leveling alts and everything else, and I went and got... I think my first ult was like a Draenei Paladin, and I went and did Onyxia for the original Quel'Serra.
Yeah.
The original Quel'Serra, and did that. We got to put the sword in the ground and get her to breathe over it and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
The whole chain. That was fun. Doing that back in the day was a lot of fun, because you still needed a group back then for it, because that was a lot of fun.
I remember being burned by Onyxia in the keep many times as a... Well, I learned after the first few times whenever I hear that RP, stay away from the keep. Though then on Classic, I got burned by it. I can't recall if I actually did Onyxia when I was in vanilla. I remember a lot of my guild did it, and I think I helped somebody on an attunement run for Onyxia, but I was more Molten Core.
Yeah, so I was a raid leader in vanilla, and in addition to doing the Warcraft radio stuff, and it was getting 40 people to get their Onyxia scale cloak.
I can imagine, yeah.
It was crazy. Yeah, if they're so here's my funny story about Onyxia. So I had a very brief period of time where I was a game master at Blizzard after leaving Warcraft Radio, and here's a story from Azeroth. So there was a bug with the attunement, and this is in 2006. There was a bug with the attunement where the Alliance were not able to get attuned very often, and so what would happen is, now I don't know if either of you have done the attunement on the Alliance side in vanilla or Classic, but there's a situation where you realize that Lady Katana Prestor is actually Onyxia, and you have to basically call her out in the throne room. And when you do that, there's a scripted event where all the guards, turns out they're Dragonkin, they turn into Dragonkin, and then there's like an attack scene that goes on. Well, what was happening in 2006 is it would periodically bug out where they wouldn't turn anymore, and then so nobody could actually complete the quest. But after a server restart, the first person to go could get it done, and then it wouldn't reset for the next guy.
Reset for another week, yeah.
So
I vaguely recall seeing that, because I think one of the first things you ever see, there's like a very old, really bad FPS 4x3 version of like the first person who ever got to see it. And it's just like, I think it's like one of the biggest lore moments in like vanilla WoW.
It was
It's like finding because you all the way through vanilla questing, you're always going back and you're talking to her, and she sends you off to Red Ridge and everything else.
Yeah,
and then you go back and you
she's
eventually go
weird.
through this. Yeah,
Like, there's something off about her the whole time, you know.
But you don't really think about it until you eventually go on this quest chain through Blackrock Depths, and you do the whole escort quest. Which, God, I did that so many times, like for myself and helping other people. And then it's just like the big revelation of the fact that she is Onyxia. It just blows your mind the first time you see it. And I don't think there's been a big lore moment to that degree of like a big reveal.
I'm thinking now. I'm thinking.
Like, don't get me wrong. There are big points. Like, I think there's a lot of things that work in retrospect, like where they've changed Ny'alotha to always have been working with the Legion since Warcraft 3. Like, okay,
it's the heel turn. You're looking for the heel turn, right?
The heel turn,
yeah.
But it's just like, I don't think there's been, and it might be just due to the fact that vanilla classic WoW is like your leveling staple, like of how you're introduced to the game, and then you get that big introduction to like, look, it's a black dragon. Black dragons are bad, yo. You've learned this after going to Red Ridge and going through like that side of the map. Black dragons are bad, and it turns out she's been a black dragon all along. And I don't think there's been a really big.
I mean, Sylvanas is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, but that's over multiple expansions though.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, maybe Garrosh to an extent, but that's again, it's a story that's taken part over several expansions, and even with Cataclysm, they really messed up in how they told the story in a couple of different places.
Sure, yeah, I would agree.
Would losing Varian and Vol'jin be, or that wasn't surprising?
The Game of Thrones moments.
Yes, let's kill our heroes.
Yeah.
How many, like, we didn't just lose those two. I think Ysera was a big plot moment. I think Val'sharah was really well told in Legion in terms of the lore moments it did.
I was talking with my friend Vel and then Lady Emma about how really we're creating our leaders to be the new team now. I mean, like we've killed off a lot of the older people, and it's a new generation. We're rising up. It's the Teen Titans.
I think we talked about this a while back, where we actually looked and saw how many mainstay characters from Warcraft 3 existed in the main game anymore. And we're literally down to Sylvanas and Jaina, essentially.
Is that it? Well, was Thrall in Warcraft 3?
Thrall was in Warcraft 3, yeah. So, but he's not really the mainstay character.
He's not.
No,
I agree. Yeah.
I mean,
allowed to retire. You could
say the same about... Oh, true. I mean, you could say the same about Vol'jin. Like, he's going to have a big thing in going forward now. But there's not a lot of the big characters left anymore.
And like Bonsomdi, I still think is going to be bigger because he's been in the history of WoW. Maybe not Warcraft 3.
That's an interesting thing that you bring up, because I believe, again, this goes back to the Zoltan interview where they turn around and Ian's gone that Bonsomdi's going to have a bigger role than was originally planned in Shadowlands because of how everybody jumped to the reception.
Oh yeah, he's amazing. You've come to I can't even do his line. His voice actor is amazing.
My favorite as a warrior is when I die. He goes, "All that armor didn't help you much, did it?"
I like the stuff where it's just like, if you're a Death Knight, you've got the stench of death around your man. And then Demon Hunters is like, you go away now. I don't
want you here.
I'll see you soon, real soon.
Bonsomdi's pretty good. There's a lot coming. It's hard to talk about what's coming without spoilering stuff, because there's a lot of stuff that's out there that hasn't been stated directly by Ian, any of the other devs, or that's already in the alpha. So we're going to stray away from a lot of that, because the people come and watch it and listen, and they don't want to get super spoiled because they're still casually waiting for Shadowlands, and a lot of people won't touch it until it's in their palms, which I absolutely get.
Even in alpha, I'm not playing for the story. I'm kind of bypassing the story in my mind because I want to enjoy it firsthand. Yeah. But I'm just going through and seeing, which doesn't always help me, because there was a few times like that dredger that bugged out of me because I did not read the quest decks.
Yes.
One thing they announced at BlizzCon, just back to Bonsomity though, that I am really excited about. I want to go to the side. That's going to be an awesome dungeon, I hope.
Oh yes.
It's going to hopefully it'll be as cool as the Maw of Souls, because that was a really cool dungeon when it was shown at BlizzCon, and then because it was the way it was told at BlizzCon is like you're on the ship, it's going through the with the souls of the damned, and it's just like I don't think it lived up to expectations. I think Maw of Souls, especially with how, and I think the way Mythic Plus worked in Legion had a big thing to do with that. But it'll be interesting to see. What have I been up to though this week? Wow. Other than, I'm still working on getting all of my characters up to about 445 item level, which is a lot, but I want to try and get them at least ready to not get squashed in Shadowlands, judging by all the people I've seen with pre-mades at item level 80 getting absolutely mushed into the floor. But yeah, trying to get them to 445. I think that's a decent item level to go for. Like my main's at 474, it doesn't have any problems. So I've doing some Alt Mythic Plus. Otherwise, I've just been abusing the rep buff for not what it was intended for. Since I already have all the allied races unlocked, I've been going back to Legion to get my Paragon mounts. Woo! I've got 2 of the 3 Fail Crushers. I got the Nightfallen Rug today, but finally, the biggest thing I'm happy about is I finally got the little donkey from Arathi.
Nice.
So the only one I'm missing from Warfronts now is the Frightened Kodo, which is... It's going to remain one of those ones that is like the TLPD, and it's going to be when I'm working on a big fucking project and I can just sit AFK until my buzzer goes off with it. Otherwise, it's not been that bad. I've just been doing Mythic Plus when I can. I think I'm going to be doing some after the podcast is done. But yeah, done raiding, just enjoying my free time. But unfortunately, with no raiding and only relying on like the group Mythic Plus every now and again, I've been feeling the pinch of not talking to people during lockdown. It's getting to you a little bit.
Yeah, I hear you. It's honestly been a lifesaver for me having the Warcraft radio guys to go and play just do game nights with and stuff like that. And some of them are on furlough in the UK and all that, so they got lots of time to play now. So I've been having fun with that. But if it wasn't for that, yeah, it'd be rough.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I've the streams and I hop into voice chat for a while with people, and that is like because I'm an introvert and I get people like talking with you, it fills me up. But like I'm able, I don't need people to be in my physical vicinity to get.
Yeah, I'm in that case where I'm not super introverted and I'm not super extroverted, but I'm a social. We're all social creatures at a base level. So I find that streaming has definitely alleviated that when you're just talking to your audience, because you always feel like you're talking to someone.
Yeah.
Other than just watching Netflix and just talking to yourself and just slowly going mad.
Though, what was I doing? I was doing something and I actually started commentating while I was doing it. I mean, I realized that the streaming mentality of talking has started permeating stuff.
That's funny
stuff. Yeah, I mean, we don't really have a main topic to talk about this week per se, but
I do want to bring up one thing. So Athalus, I have to say, I have really liked that you have started the trend of devs talking with content creators, because
I can't take credit for that. I mean, I guess I can take credit. Okay, you're right. So what are you specifically? Okay, you're obviously referring to the interview. Yeah.
It's like since then I've seen them go on more streams, and my biggest issue with like the earlier, like they would have like the Q&As or like the talking, and it always felt a little bit less. It felt more sterile. Whereas this, it feels more like you're talking. Obviously, you have to like give questions ahead of time so that way they can go through it. But it's not.
No. Nope. Absolutely not. Yeah, we kept the integrity on this one through the roof. So pretty much I reached out to our contacts at Blizzard. I was already going to be in Southern California for another work event for my day job, if you will. And this was during the Race to World First, which Warcraft Radio was doing a lot of coverage on. We had a whole team that was putting out almost daily videos of what had been going on, what had transpired. And our goal was, people that were working, we wanted them to be able to come home, sit down 5-10 minutes, be caught up on everything that had happened that day if they didn't have time to watch 16 hours of streams. And so because of that, we were really close to the action. We knew what was going on. We knew all the issues that had come up, and there were quite a few. A lot of it had to do with the fact that Blizzard, and Ian talked about this, that they don't really have the systems to support the things happening in the moment, if you will. They've always had sort of direct contact with the guilds that seem to be doing well, but the level of transparency that's needed for an event like this that has suddenly gone to where there's 100,000 people plus at sometimes watching it, like, I don't think they were ready for that. And I also think Blizzard has been very open about the fact that sometimes they're a little bit slow to adapt to changing conditions, if you will. So it was a long shot. I just said, hey, I'm going to be there. Can we do this interview? Yep. Okay. Well,
I think it's a big thing about, you mentioned about changing environments, and I think streaming, podcasting's definitely come back in a big way, especially vidcasting. It's definitely come along in ways where it was not at when the game launched. We've often everybody has talked about like warcraftmovies.com and everything that got posted in the very early days of YouTube, and like, because Justin TV wasn't even a big thing back then yet. So because nobody really had the way to stream content, and that was why Machinima was such a big thing, because everybody was creating content and it got put up on the YouTube in the very early days of YouTube, up on Warcraft movies. And so we're now at the point where obviously you can reach out to a dev if you're known in the community, for them to, obviously, as you did, have a sit down chat with them in person, or as like Sloot and Zoltan have done, they've chatted while they've been talking about Shadowlands, which is good. It's a very good way of getting the devs to communicate. And I think a lot of people don't understand that sometimes you don't need to have pre-questions, although I think it helps in a lot of cases.
Yeah. And I think they prefer to get them ahead of time, but we just didn't.
No, that's fair.
Because you want the reactions, right? And if they have their finger on the pulse of the event, then they'll already have the answers ready. And Ian's obviously a very eloquent person that puts a lot of thought into these topics, and so he's ready with answers to questions, just like he did on Sloot and Zoltan discussions. And the other thing I like that Blizzard's doing is that they're trying to put more people out in front. So not just Ian anymore, right? Like, they want to start getting some exposure to some other folks that may be a little bit, because I mean, even Ian is a couple steps removed from doing the day-to-day in their design, right? And so in some cases you want to hear from some of these other voices, and I like that. But yeah, it's clearly the not being conceited, but just the level of response that people gave to this interview, and the comments on the YouTube page were all about how this was like the most open and transparent they've ever seen a WoW developer be. Like, it wasn't a rushed media interview at an E3 or something like that, or Gamescom or whatever. And since then, you're getting more of them on streams and all that. So I'd like to think that there was a shift in mentality where now they are looking for opportunities to get ahead of things, right? Instead of waiting to respond and focusing on the work. Now they're thinking, okay, what could the community's reaction be to this? All right, let's put someone out in front of it before it becomes an issue. Because in this day and age, like, people react, and within 72 hours of a top streamer saying they don't like something, a huge portion of the community may not like it. So if they can get in front of that and head it off at the pass, because the only people that people want to hear from more than some of these top content creators is the developers themselves. So they should take advantage of that.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, you see the information that both from top streamers and from content creators, and when the devs are on these interviews themselves, you literally see Reddit fill up as the information gets released.
100%.
Yeah. And I,
so it's very weird. Sorry, Fraz. But it works as a big, horrible echo chamber at times, because once the information is there, like, it gets said, but not everybody will watch a YouTube channel. But those people that don't watch YouTube or see the Twitch clips might read Reddit, so that information gets to them. Right. And all it takes is a little bit of information for them to just slightly agree with, and then they'll communicate to their guild buddies who don't watch Asmongold or see the stuff that comes up on Reddit from an Asmongold stream, or from the Zoltan don't read Wowhead because they stray away from spoilers. But just that one person, and then it just spreads, communication wise, and it can become a horrible echo chamber at times.
Well, it's great case in point on that. I don't remember what the topic was, but I feel like Ian was on the interview with Sloot. Sloot asked him a question. Within seconds, you have the Twitch stream flooded with garbage mechanic. This is shit. Blah, 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 blah. And then Ian immediately responds to it, and chat just suddenly changes in his favor. Like, boom. Like, okay, this is why they've got to be out there. Because if they're not, then the last thing they hear is the streamer saying the negative thing. But if there's someone there that can like immediately head that off with why, like the reason why, and you saw some of that in the interview that I did, where in the comments are like, I don't agree with their decision to not line up the regions so that they all release the content at the same time, the new raid content. But after hearing him explain why, I understand.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That's the kind of thing you want to see.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I think it goes to the fact that Blizzard does listen, but they don't always respond, and that can be good and bad, because if they respond, people will hold them to their word. But if they don't respond, they look like they're not listening.
I think a big part of that, and a big problem with that, is, as Athalus said, like, it's a different mentality than where they were 10, 15 years ago to where we are now. And because nearly everybody has had some relation with World of Warcraft in some way, they look at any other game dev that will, if it's, because obviously between the different pillars of an indie game to a massively AAA one, and they'll turn around and they'll use Blizzard's response as a basis because that's what they've seen for so long. So if a game dev immediately responds on this thing has just come out of their game, and the dev responds to it like that, they'll turn around and go, oh, I wish other game devs I know of games I've played would respond like this and everything else. And maybe it's just changing that around from their thing, as you've said. That is just going to change the way that people look at the devs themselves, because to a grand amount of people, like a game dev is a faceless thing, and a faceless entity until we see people like Ian and all the other game devs that you said they're bringing to light. But then everybody always forgets that it's not always them that makes the major decisions, and it comes down from the levels that's above them, which are the true faceless identities as well. But these guys have to take the slack because they're being the face of the company.
Yeah, and one other thing I think changes it is back in 2018, I got the opportunity to speak with John Statz, and I think by having somebody that's not a developer and not working with them on whatever the thing is, it feels more like the community is talking to them, and I think even the developer feels more relaxed. Like when I talked with John, he felt more relaxed because he was talking with me, and like on these interviews, they seem more relaxed, and I think it's whereas when it's the two talking to a video with no feedback, you feel much more, you have to be on guard.
The thing that I, as a developer, would frustrate me. So I did a brief stint working for Sony Online Entertainment. I had to represent, I represented a game called Vanguard Saga of Heroes that lasts longer than a few years. So I was a designer on that. And you get people that come by and talk to you from the media that don't really play your game that extensively, or they've only heard, little things here and there. And so you're trying to explain the basic premise to them. But when you get someone that comes to talk to you, like the best interview for me at E3 was when I had a guy that came up that had like one of the only podcasts about our game at that point. And I'm like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. This is fun. Now I get to actually discuss something with someone that understands what I'm saying. And that was a lot better. And so I think that's also part of their strategy here is they don't need to go talk to the PC gamers of the world or anything like that. I mean, those are great publications that cover games at large, and I might discover new games that way. But if I want to really get into the meat of it and address my audience, which is people that actually play WoW consistently on a regular basis for years and are collectors like you guys, or big raiders and things like that, then I need to go direct to the people that actually cover this thing on a regular basis.
I think there's a nice middle point, because you're still going to want to go and talk to the big publications to be like, especially when a new expansion launches, rather than a patch.
Yeah.
Because the way you're going to get the new players in is to buy the expansion rather than...
Sure.
Because the big guys will always, like your Polygons, your PC gamers and all that, will always turn around and go, Warcraft's big patch is coming out. This is what it's looking like it's going to have and everything else. Because those guys won't report on the PTR, whereas your Wowhead and like everybody else that's in the community, you know, will always look at the information that's coming out and report on it. That's why there's a big thing of learning to trust the content creator that you appreciate. You know, the ones that you watch, and trying to find the ones that you want to understand, because there is an absolute ton of WoW content creators out there. Like, you could literally go on YouTube and you could fall over between the small ones, which are literally reporting, like they're data mining the tier sets and just reporting on those and just putting those out there, to the WoW heads, which is showing you their data mining as they go, to the people that are playing on the alpha and showing you all that. Loads of different ways, and people do content creation in different ways, yeah. where they look at everything. But you've got to find the ones that you trust. Because, and by trust, I'm not saying has an opinion that agrees with yours. You want to find a content creator that is going to give you a good heads up on what's going on, the stuff that might be outside of your normal field of vision. That will be looking at all the places that you might not do, report on it, but report on it with a level head, and not reporting it on a way that is like, I don't like this mechanic. But if they turn around and go, I don't like this, but here's how I think they could improve it, is someone I'm probably more going to listen to. And it's why it's a big problem with YouTube content creation, especially with the way that YouTube works nowadays, is that drama is the big way to get your clicks and everything else.
Yeah.
So you'll see, and I mean, it's a big thing to hate on devs anyway, because it's going to get you clicks by being more hate-filled, even though you possibly don't feel that way. But it comes across in a bad way, because then people who will mindlessly listen to you as a content creator will then get that mindset, and then that mindset, as we said earlier, trickles down onto everybody they talk to.
Yeah.
Yes, getting eyes on content. People tend to, the average amount of time somebody watches a YouTube video is 30 seconds or less, a lot of times less than that. So it's just getting them to click on it to begin with, and then there's all the strategies around getting them to stay on your video, right? So yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think once you've got your channel established, you don't have to do that as much, but it can be really hard in the beginning.
Absolutely. So. You'll see a lot of drop off anyway, for people, because eventually that's what you get known as, and that's what people try. They try new stuff. They try they try being very nice about things and pointing out the good things, but you often find that the good videos do not outweigh the bad ones, and often a lot of things are around there. I think we're coming up to about our hour. If there's anything you want to drop in before we call it a day.
Yeah, just as a parting thought, I will gauge the interview that I did as a success if, when the first raid tier comes out in Shadowlands, we actually see a coordinated, here's how we're going to communicate directly with the community. Now, I don't think that they need to go on somebody's stream necessarily, but they need to have a structured way of responding to things within 24 hours of them happening, so that people know what's going on. And that might mean going on the complexity stream. It might mean going on the method stream. Hopefully it means going on Warcraft radio. I don't know, but they've got to be out there in front of it. And that'll be the real measure of success. These interviews they're doing right now are great, but the purpose of mine was, what are you going to do around the race world first? So I'm hoping to see that.
No, absolutely.
And I feel like we will. I feel like we will. So. Yep.
It's probably, before we call it a day, it's probably a contentious question and everything else, but I'm not going to ask you whose stream I thought was better, but what I will ask you is something that happens in my guild when they were watching it this year. Now, a lot of people were watching the specific limit streams, not the commentary ones, the actual ones
Maximum,
with the in-game.
Primarily.
Like, do you prefer the commentary-based streams, or do you prefer listening to the games with to the actual the comms?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would tell you, first of all, that I had about 7 streams up at a time. In fact, to the point where Comcast hit me up and said, hey, you went over a terabyte of bandwidth this month. So, because I was streaming, uploading videos, editing, doing multiple revisions, and watching like 7 streams at a time. So, and my wife was watching Netflix downstairs a lot. So there, between all that, it totally overloaded my bandwidth limit. I didn't even know I had a limit, because I have gigabit internet. So I'm like, but no, in terms of, I think there's different feels. So for example, like anytime there were a couple of hosts on the method stream that when they would go on, I would listen because they're funny as hell. Like I was just not in a bad way, in a great way. Like I loved, S-Fan goes on there and just like jokes around or whatever. Right. So just a couple of those guys. So that can be fun. but there is a lot of dead time on a 24-hour stream, right?
Yeah,
There's a
no,
lot of
absolutely.
time where, okay, well, now it's 3 a.m. and Method's asleep, and now there's guilds that aren't doing as great. And so it's hard to do the right way. For me personally, I probably spent more time with the audio turned on Maximum's commentary, listening to voice comms. And there was a lot that I learned from that. There was a lot of just, inside jokes. The way that they act and they cut up with each other was a lot of fun. I don't know for a fact. I don't believe, I could be totally wrong, but I don't believe that Method's comms are as funny and entertaining to listen to. I get the feeling they're a lot more serious business, but that's just the perspective I have. I hope
We
that Method
never
will,
hear it, do we?
I hope
So
that Method will consider opening it up this next time around. Because I would love to. I think if they did, there would actually be more people listening to their personal channels than there would be watching the main Method stream. And so that might be one of the reasons that they don't do it, because they're trying to build up that channel, which they've done a great job of doing so far.
they still keep things going in that, but I think people literally just tune in for the world first stuff and everything else.
What about, well, I mean, they've had some good stuff, not to the 100,000 plus, but, a successful channel like that only needs a few thousand to start off with.
Absolutely.
And I mean, they're on right now with Path of Exile with like 3,700. That's great. That's all they need to get going. Yeah. So that, I mean, they do totally non-WoW stuff. Like they did a Final Fantasy race that did really
I loved
well
it.
too.
I loved that.
Yeah.
As someone that dipped into Final Fantasy 14, that was really good to see. It was a little bit of a different ballpark and everything.
Absolutely. So. But what do you prefer, comms or commentary?
It's really weird because with the recent RtWF Race to World Fest, I know I tried to abbreviate it there. I mostly listen to the Method one because there's more commentators I've heard of. Yeah. So I was there for Preach and Bay, and
it's good stuff.
You comment, yeah, no, absolutely. Your commentators only work as well as who they're working against, or working with, I should say, rather than against. And like Preach generally will work with whoever he's with. They'll have great conversations.
He's good at figuring out the chemistry and acting accordingly. I agree.
Bay's really good, and having Preach and Bay together is really good.
Awesome.
Every time I dropped. Yeah, absolutely. Every time I dropped into the limit one, because I didn't know who these guys were, I didn't feel like that I was that invested in what they were saying. But it was sometimes worth dropping into it to see what. But it's the same. Like I watch S-Fan stream whenever I can. There's a lot of people, a lot of guys out there who I follow who I don't often get to watch a lot of.
Yeah,
I go to Frazley stream to watch him because I work with him a lot. I get on with him and his community, and it's really easy to just sit and chat to him. Trying to sit in an S-Fan stream when he's got like 6,000 people just blitzing the chat he's a really funny guy, but and I think it was a pretty big thing of the previous Race to World Fest, the Crucible of Storms, where everything was on the upcoming to Classic WoW, and it's just like. The minute because they were just heavily pushing Classic WoW, I just couldn't deal with it.
Okay.
But it's different strokes for different folks. Everybody's got their content creator that they would like to watch. I'm sure there's guys that knew the content creators that were commentating for Limit and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, Dratnos is well known. Titles is well known. Aya is actually doing, I think, MDI this weekend, right? For me, Limit, there was. Method, I liked Method because it was like you're hanging out on the couch with guys and like talking about what's going on, and that was a lot of fun. And then when I went to Complexity's stream, it was more like we're doing a professional casting desk, and it was very consistent, like play by play. Now they cut up as well, and they had the couch stuff. But I thought as the race went on, the Complexity stream got better and better, and I bounced back and forth between the two. Like I said, there were certain hosts on the Method stream I would go watch, but then I would bounce back to Complexities because I like the commentary. But what about you, Frazley? What do you prefer, comms or?
I would say the commentary, because if I don't understand the mechanics, I'd appreciate somebody like explaining it. It's one reason why I like BlizzCon. I enjoyed it when they would explain things on there. But I actually did not watch a lot of it because I'm more of a streamer that watches the smaller streamers. I like being able to interact with them, and that's.
But I mean, from you wanting to listen to commentary, I assume that's because you don't do a lot of raiding.
Exactly. Yeah, and so
content
makes sense.
Right. If I was raiding, I would enjoy the comms. Like when I've been on a raid team, I've enjoyed hearing what the raid team's saying because it's been helping me understand. But a lot of raid teams is very like jargonish. I find because you're in the middle of it. Whereas at least commentary, you get the humor.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's something to be said about the MDI as well. Like the MDI is a curious beast because whenever I do Mythic Plus myself, I always enjoy chatting bullshit with my friends. You know, and I think that's part of the good thing that like keeps us just doing Mythic Plus, just in general, like whatever key level, whether it's alts or mains. But watching someone commentate over it, especially when they've got someone that doesn't really know, and I feel like, especially with the way the MDI is going at the moment, I feel it could work a lot better if they reduce the amount of casters for it and treated it very much. And I'm gonna do the same thing that I used with my guild, and I say they should condense the commentary to a play-by-play and a color, just one of each, and then have an in-depth look at the dungeon. I think they did it with the Legion ones, but they between runs when they were setting up, they had someone that looked in depth at what strategies they could use for like the dungeons or the sort of builds they could use. It just feels like there's a lot of voices talking.
Part of the issue, so there are some cases where they'll have like 5 of them around like after the match, and they'll have 5 people all kind of going back and forth. But I think what they've really done is they've tried to model it off of some of the other professional sports, like with the NFL. Like before the game starts, you got 5 guys on CBS that are going to talk, and then during the game you got the 2. But I think the other issue you run into is the MDI and the AWC, like the day is really long. Like you're talking what 8 to 10 hours of going.
It's like watching Race the World First and expecting 2 people to be on desk for 10 minutes. It's not going to happen.
Good to have people to rotate between, and they do that at BlizzCon too every year. But
yeah, no, absolutely.
But I feel what you're saying. Like it feels like you can get a lot. It feels like there's some inconsistency, and that's actually what I was talking about with the method channel. Like depending on the personality you got, like it was a totally different cast. Which,
absolutely.
Well, not necessarily in a negative way, but so many voices, like you're not getting a consistent experience across the whole event.
Yeah, like some personalities treated it like a normal Twitch, like they were streaming, just conversing with the chat, which isn't a bad thing, especially in like the dead times that you were talking about.
Oh, and I love Rich. I mean, that's some good stuff.
Favorite. Rich is, I get his personality, but it's not what I really mesh with.
That's fine.
But maybe I get
man. That's the thing I love about him most.
Debatable. Anyway, I think they're all very handsome gentlemen. I will not give it that. They don't hold a candle to yourself though.
Oh, thank you.
But we're going to call it a day. Athalus, if they want to find you around the internet and they don't know who you are, where could they find you?
Yeah, a couple places. So first and foremost, Warcraft Radio, we're everywhere. So Twitter /Warcraft Radio, YouTube, Facebook. We've got an Instagram and a Discord as well, warcraftradio.com. And then myself personally, at Gareth Kales, GarethCales. No one can ever spell that correctly. I don't have a simple name. But over on...
above your name.
You do. That's good, because it's a video. It's a video. Anyway, it's right there. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter. And then I'm, occasionally we do a show on Sunday at 3:00 Eastern. I don't know if we'll do one this week or not, but the show that I primarily work on is Heart of Azeroth. So we'll see. We might rebrand it something Shadowlands themed soon. Don't know yet.
I'm currently working on all of my assets for Shadowlands theming at the moment. I've showed Frazley some of the stuff I'm playing with.
It looks nice.
It's pretty in depth at the moment.
Very cool. Very cool. And just for the record, you had a little alliance symbol under my name this whole time. That is inaccurate. And
look, Mephisto said the same thing. All right, like there's only so much I can do. There's
very
only
much
so
a board player. I didn't know that. I didn't know I needed to let you know that ahead of time. So To
be fair, it's not a question I really ask anybody. I just have
assume
it's gonna be changed for the Shadowlands theming. All right. Don't worry about that. It's all stuff that's a work in progress.
All right,
Mr. Frazley, where can they find you around the internet?
You can follow me on Twitter to see when I do stuff at Frazlytastic. You can hear my podcast Frazlycast every week at gnome.live. It's like different people from the community. Like this week is Vel, and that was a fun time. And then you can find my shenanigans at gnome.live, where I will do things. I'll eat spicy beans, eat Bean Boozled. I'll feed my cat treats and then have my cat lick my hands because it's like, oh, more. I'm like, give me more.
Listen, man.
And I get cat aggro while I'm trying to do irons.
This man now has a more complicated camera setup for his goddamn cat than I do at home.
I now added a mount for the cat cam, but then I also got a desk cam and the cat on the desk.
That's awesome.
Insane.
He's the true star of the stream, not me. It's the cat.
People come, yeah, it's disgraceful. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you can find me at Titans Creed on my main Twitter account, at Gaming Phoenix, if you just want the YouTube videos and streams. Otherwise, you can find the podcast in video form over on youtube.com/Project Phoenix Productions, as well as loads of the other projects I'm working on. You can find Twitch streams like this or some of the other games that I play on twitch.tv/Project Phoenix Productions, and the audio version will be out on Wednesday on all good podcast catchers. We are done for the day. I'm gotta go do more work getting set up for the charity stream in June, which is going to be nutty and insane again. We're looking at maybe doing a 3-day one this year. It's going to be crazy fun. Keep an eye on all the good socials for that. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for Frazley, as always, for joining me. Thank you very much to Athalus from Warcraft Radio for joining us. It's been an absolute blast and just
my pleasure.
Shooting the breeze. Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, this has been Stories Around Azeroth, as Mr. Frazley always likes to say.
Be awesome.